Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. It is Thursday, not Tuesday, but because James Benge conveniently got delayed at an airport. Which airport was it?
It was Verona Airport, which is
Verona.
one of the tiniest, pokiest airports you'll ever go to. Sort of 40 people queued around the one restaurant which only sold burgers. 4.5 hours there. So yeah, unfortunately, sorry for missing our recording, Charles.
Yes, so that's why we're recording this on a Thursday rather than Tuesday. So it was going to be a sort of Champions League pre-match podcast stroke show, but now it's a post-match one. And yeah, plenty to talk about. It was a fun night last night.
We were both going to say beforehand, weren't we? Arsenal are absolutely going to batter this lot.
4-0 my prediction was going to be.
Yeah, and I said all along, I said, Zinchenko, David, Raya, they're all starting. But don't worry, we won't be worried at all about what that means for the derby. These preview pods are really easy to do after the game.
They are. Yeah, you dried out much from last night. A little bit wet. Not the best conditions, was it?
It was absolutely. I've never known sort of rain like this. It was torrential, but for about 8 hours straight. So while we're on that subject, I went. I'm getting married in April. Pity poor Hannah, who was committed to that. And I went suit shopping. Went to a lovely place, Edward Sexton, yesterday, and come in. You know, you want to look and feel your best, don't you, when you're going to try on your suit for your wedding? And I'm there, sort of drenched in rain, thinking, God, I've got to go to the football later as well. I'm going to look an absolute state. And Sam's taking me up, says, "A big fan of you and Charles." I was like, what on earth is he talking about? But anyway, shout out to Sam Kerr, Edward Sexton, if you're watching. Thanks so much for your help. And yeah, maybe next time we do one of these, I'll be wearing a suit, smartening the joint up a bit, because we're both looking a bit scruffy, aren't we?
Well, that sounds like a potential show sponsor to me, there, James. Were you doing some networking while you were there? Sponsored by Savile Rowe.
What about if we had bruised banana in the lining of the suits? Oh my God, that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah. Actually, we didn't even talk about it. The fancy new intro. It just went totally unnoticed at the start there. It's Watson Benge new intro. We've got our own extra time intro now.
It's like you've made a real commitment. I mean, on the subject of marriage, you've now made this real commitment to me, haven't you? That intro is the long haul.
That is as big a piece of commitment as you're ever going to get from me there.
Exactly. It's all I need.
Okay. I know. And the outro. We've got an outro as well. We've got
honestly, I almost want to rush through this just to see the outro, which is even better.
See the bruised banana outro rather than there you go. Get that again. Have that in your set. Are you? What is your colour scheme for your wedding? Mine was very much red and white. Have you been allowed to do that?
No, there's no red. There's no white. I keep hinting to people, sort of like, if you want to go and get the Arsenal first team to record me a congratulations message, you probably need to get in touch with this list of people quite soon. And no one seems keen to do it.
I think you've pissed far too many of those Arsenal players off for them to record you any sort of message over the years. Yeah, my wedding was red and white. It was one of the few things I basically let my wife do everything apart from the table names, who were named after my favourite Arsenal players, and I had lovely things designed. So I was sitting on the David Rocastle and Dennis Bergkamp table, and yeah, then my suit, the suit wasn't red and white, but the tie and everything like that was very much Arsenal colours, and that was as much input as I had in my wedding. As
that is more than I get. I will be very lucky to get anything red or white past both Hannah and Emily, the planner. I feel like it's going to be an Arsenal-free zone. I definitely am not getting table names, which is a real shame because, I think also it's because it's very obvious. There'd be a very obvious level of sort of preference, and whoever gets sort of, especially after last night, whoever gets sort of Bukayo Saka's table and Martin Odegaard's table knows they are the most.
I had seven tables, I think. It's a little game going a bit off piece here. Can you guess? I've already given you two of them, and I couldn't choose who was top table between Rocastle and Bergkamp, so I had both. I cheated, and because I couldn't make that decision. But who are the other tables? I think I had 6 others. I'm not sure I remember them all, but I remember some. Who do you reckon I had?
Yeah, absolutely Ian Wright. I'm kind of surprised that wasn't your top table.
I definitely had Ian Wright. Yes.
I mean, assume Thierry.
Yeah.
So Bergkamp.
Yeah, he was top table. Yeah,
Perez.
I did have Bobby. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, and you're quite early 90s as well, aren't you? So I'm gonna have to assume Tony Adams.
Tony was there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't. I remember there was definitely two more, and I can't remember one of them. I remember one. I don't think you're going to get.
Limpar.
Think of.
I know you like Anders Limpar.
I didn't have
do you
Anders.
like him that much?
Think of.
Merce.
I didn't have Merce. No, think of what's the what am I thinking of here? All I have to mention is the word alcohol. You're probably going to get it, but and not Merce. But
oh yeah, of course, Raymondo.
But yeah, right. I definitely had Ray Parler. And
was that presumably like every other table has sort of a ready supply of red and white wine, and anyone on Ray Parler's table is just drinking Cobra Bombs.
Cobra Bombs. There you go. That's it, isn't it? What's the shot he always does, Ray? I used to do it all the time when I was a kid.
It's a Jaeger bomb, isn't it?
Yeah, Jaeger bomb. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking of. Right. Well, anyway, we're 6 minutes in. We haven't even talked about football yet. We're talking about weddings and yeah, weddings basically. So I think everyone's going to switched off by now. So let's talk about what was an amazing night last night, having Arsenal back in the Champions League, and it was very special. Mikel Arteta was speaking about afterwards, saying how emotional it was, and just hearing the anthem again, how the players had been building up to it. We'd heard from Gabriel Jesus in the build-up, saying the players had been playing the song in the gym in the preparation for the game, and you sort of went into it and were wondering, would the occasion be a little bit too much for them? Would they get too carried away? And sometimes that can work against teams, but it definitely didn't work against Arsenal last night, did it? It was a fantastic performance. Now, I want to go into another little game actually before we really get stuck into this. So this was Arsenal's first. Oh, I've just taken you off the screen, James. I apologize. This was Arsenal's first Champions League game since that 5-1 against Bayern at the Emirates, the fateful 10-2 on aggregate. Can you name me the starting 11 from that game against Bayern Munich? How many players do you think you could name in that starting 11?
Oh, Lord. I suspect not as many as I would like. If I go from back to front, Petr Cech?
No.
Okay. Oh, Ospina then?
Yeah.
Jeez. I can see where it all went wrong. Bellerin?
Yeah.
Monreal on the other flank. And then Koscielny and Per?
No.
Gabriel?
No. Mr. Catastrophe.
No, wait, who?
Mr. Catastrophe.
Mr. Catastrophe. Oh,
35 million pounds, yeah.
Jesus, I can't believe we kept it to 10. And then I'm going to say Coquelin and Santi's pretty much out of the picture by then.
Coquelin didn't play.
Oh, right. Oh, of course. Xhaka.
Yeah.
Ramsey.
Yeah.
Ozil.
No, Ozil didn't play in that game. I don't know why.
Iwobi?
No. Oxlade-Chamberlain was in midfield with Xhaka and Ramsey. And then, up front, we had Olivier Giroud flanked by who?
Sanchez.
Yeah.
He'll have been in his chasing the ball around manically phase and giving it away every 3 minutes. I'm going to say Walcott.
Yeah, he scored, didn't he? Walcott scored. I think he made him 1-0, didn't he, in the first half?
Yeah.
That's a good effort, mate. I definitely would not have got anything like that.
I mean, to be honest, that's not even what I remember of that game. I mean, you talk about sort of sea change of atmosphere. That was, I don't know if it was the first one, but it was certainly one of the many games where there was sort of those marches from Highbury to the Emirates. I think it might have been the first one. It was certainly the one where I remember someone comparing Arsene Wenger to Robert Mugabe.
Oh, God.
So, I mean, you talk about a sea change in atmosphere, and I don't think anyone that day, even though we all sort of sensed it might not be next season that Arsenal are back in the Champions League, I don't think anyone would have thought it's going to be 6 years before we kick a ball. But that felt like one of the lowest ebbs in the. I think it kind of gets forgotten because of things like Baku, but there was real animosity between supporters there. And huge, animosity and indifference. Yeah. And it was so dispiriting. And like the contrast between last night when, for me, like I actually wasn't that excited beforehand. I particularly because with working at CBS, I tend to associate the Champions League with sort of nights where I get to bed at like 4 a.m. because I've been working non-stop and love the work. But, you know, you don't always look forward to those nights. But the minute you sort of walk up and you see the Champions League hoardings around the Emirates and you kind of hear that crackle in the air, felt really special. And really, really one of the most fun nights this grand seen in a while.
Yeah, it was a really special night, I think. And it was a perfect night, wasn't it? I mean, if you'd asked Mikel at the start of the week, you know, what would be your perfect outcome on Wednesday night, and pretty much what happened is what he would have predicted, wouldn't it? You know, 3-0 up at half time, and it gives you the opportunity to rest some players ahead of North London derby in the second half. Score early on, sort of. It was such a. I spoke about it in my show this morning, but the fact that it was Bukayo who scored that first goal, Arsenal's first goal back in the Champions League, it was so fitting, I thought, given the part of he's played in getting Arsenal to where they are now and turning things around and basically picking the club up on his teenage shoulders a couple of years ago and carrying them to this point. And obviously now he's got great players all around him, but that certainly wasn't the case when he first came into the team. And he's been so central to what's gone on over the last few years. And I thought it was a really, really great moment for him to score that goal and Arsenal's first goal back. And once that went in, it just eased the nerves, if there were any nerves anyway, and they could just settle down. And, you know, PSV played into Arsenal's hands, no doubt about it. And, you know, but Arsenal were so clinical, weren't they? They really were. I said in the build up to the game, I thought someone was going to get a bit of a hammering pretty soon from Arsenal. It felt like it was coming. And yeah, obviously it certainly came last night, and the quality of the goals were outstanding.
Completely. I think you hit the nail on the head there by saying that sort of PSV played into Arsenal's hands, because it was almost a little bit of a shock of seeing a team other than City just sort of go. I mean, a team go head to head with Arsenal that are clearly like inferior to them. I know this is a team that plays some excellent football, and you know, last year when they had a much better front three, they kind of ripped Arsenal to shreds a little bit in Eindhoven. But I thought there was real naivety in the way that they left their back four kind of isolated to deal with Saka, Trossard, and Jesus. And I agree with you that it felt like there was something coming. I don't know if you got this sense, but for me, there was still like, it felt like Arsenal were getting close to the team that was going to absolutely smash someone. But then the minute that Jesus came back in, it just it elevated to this other level. There's a harmony, a bit of joy, and a bit of randomness maybe that Jesus sprinkles into this game. I thought he was like nothing short of sensational. I know Odegaard got the man of the match award. You could have given it to 10 players, but for me, the level just rises with Jesus in the team. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, Mikel says it, doesn't he? He says he brings chaos. When he's at his best, he just brings chaos to the training ground and to the pitch, and he does. It's just that movement. Defenders can't deal with him. They don't know where he's going to go. You know, if he drifts out wide, if he stays in the central areas. And you know, I think the one thing you always question about Jesus is his finishing. And but that was a brilliant finish last night. The touch was great. The touch he did in the start of that move that kind of started it all off was absolutely brilliant as well. That a lot of people have sort of glossed over, but it was just everything that was good about Jesus showcased in that move. And yeah, I thought he was exceptional. And you know, I could understand Eddie starting at Goodison. I think last week I kind of predicted he would start that one, but you could see it against Man United when Jesus came back that he was getting there. And yeah, he really hit top gear yesterday. It was him and Odegaard were just on an absolute another level. And yeah, just I agree. When he's playing and he's playing well, Arsenal are a completely different team, and they looked it last night.
So on brand though that, having said all of that, the best chance of the game falls to Gabriel Jesus. Was it Saka with the cutback? It comes from the right, and he misses that. And you do just think there is something like wonderful about how Jesus gets everything right, but when you sort of present him with the very easiest, you know, the instinctive goals, they just sometimes never quite break for Jesus. It doesn't matter, because the guy's he may well score you a different one, and he will certainly make sure your teammates do. But yeah, he just the other thing that really struck me, especially with, and I'm sure we'll come to talk about Raya and Ramsdale later, but Raya went long quite a bit, I thought. And you know, Jesus this isn't necessarily new, but his strength and tenacity when it comes to winning these high balls. I haven't got the numbers in front of me. I might try and get them up, but I'm certain he wins an awful lot more aerial duels than I would expect from a player of his height. He is not he's not a tall guy, and he's not physically imposing, but he just won't give up the fight for any pass or any long ball at all, and it really makes it quite hard to overcome him.
It does. And yeah, I think it's exactly that. Going back to the chaos word again, it's just that he just does not give a defender. It doesn't matter how big they are, doesn't matter maybe how many yards in front of him that they are. He will chase everything down. He will fight for absolutely everything, and he will just cause constant problems. And when he's at his best, Arsenal are a completely different position. It's easy to forget just how transformational he was during the first few months of last season when he came into the team. He took the team immediately to another level. He was that good. And yes, he went on that little barren patch for 10 games, was it, leading up to the World Cup before he got the injury.
Yeah.
But even in those 10 games when he wasn't scoring, there was never any doubt about whether he should be playing or not, because he was still... I remember the game at Stamford Bridge. You know when Arsenal won 1-0, Gabriel got this sort of scrappy goal from the corner? Yes. Jesus missed a header in that first half, which would have been just one of the great team goals. Just brilliant from Arsenal. But he was just amazing that day. Even though he missed the chances, he was just unbelievable. He caused Chelsea so many problems. It was a brilliant striker's performance. And if he can get back to that sort of form, and we're certainly seeing signs that maybe he is already after this latest injury, then that's great news for Arsenal, because he's such a good player, and I can't wait to see him against Romero at the weekend.
Yes, I was going to say the exact same thing. That he is a striker that can certainly bait some very silly decisions out of centre backs, and Romero needs precious little baiting. It has to be said.
He does. Well, look, Mikel, I've got some quotes here from Mikel after the game, talking about it and how happy he was, and saying how emotional it was just listening to music and the atmosphere that was in the stadium. How he got the sense over the past 48 hours, how the sort of where the players were and stuff like that. And he talked a lot after the game in pretty much every media interview he did about how Arsenal were great in both boxes. He called them phenomenal in both boxes. Did say that he still had a little bit of a problem what was going on between both boxes.
Yeah,
he wasn't absolutely happy with the performance. And I can kind of understand that, because PSV, Arsenal, they did cause Arsenal a few problems, and did when they got out wide and stuff. There was a bit of space that they were exploiting. They never really had too many glorious chances. You can't think of any great saves that Raya had to make. Whenever he was called into action, it was fairly comfortable. But I can see why there's certainly still room for improvement for Arsenal, and Arteta will 100% see that. But I think on the whole, when he talks about how good they were in both boxes, they really, really were. I mean, the finishing was absolutely clinical, wasn't it? So the goals were of the highest quality.
It's funny when you talk about him being unhappy about what was happening in between the boxes. It was really apparent right the way up to the second goal. Something Martin Odegaard was doing, and I couldn't fully see what it was, but on more than one occasion, I saw Arteta go mad after Odegaard hadn't made a pass, or maybe had made the wrong pass. And I think it's after the second goal, Odegaard is sort of summoned over, and Arteta's his usual manic self with him. But yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about Jesus. I thought Saka, real poacher's instinct. This is something that obviously really interested me as an employee of a US company. Did you see Serginho Dest, his defending of the opening goal? It's the worst defending I've seen in the Champions League. It's not just that, I know he's not a great defender, so it's not just that he just gets blown by Saka.
Yeah.
But he then just sort of stands on hands on shoulders, or hands on hips, just sort of looking around. Ball's rebounded there. Oh, look, there's Saka. Atrocious. It was almost like the inverse story for PSV. I thought they were really poor in and around both boxes. I know Noah Lang got a lot of love. I thought he was rubbish. He was just taking shots from 30 yards out. And I think maybe that's actually what kind of swung it Arsenal's way. I think this contest could have gone a little differently if PSV had made better decisions like Arsenal did. I mean, when we talk about both boxes, though, just a little word on Gabriel and Saliba. Just the authority, the composure of them. I thought Gabriel was great at hitting every cutback. Every PSV cutback went miles away. And then there was that moment, wasn't there, in the 65th minute with Saliba. Is it Lang? I think is like, oh, might have him here. He's made a bit of a heavy touch. The feint or whatever you want to call it to get away.
Yeah, that was one of those moments there's those great moments where you just hear a whole stadium just sort of have a big intake of breath and just like, bloody hell, that was good. You could just hear it. Everyone goes, whoa! It was just. He is a Rolls Royce of a centre back, isn't it? He really, really is.
And it's so encouraging to see that come from these players on their Champions League debut. I know Gabriel played for Lille, but Saliba, Rice, Saka, Trossard, none of them looked overawed. And, you and I have seen plenty of Arsenal players just freeze on this big stage, often against sort of the best teams, but, quite often against teams they're supposed to be much better than. It's so encouraging to see how they responded to what was an intense occasion emotionally.
Yeah, it was a perfect start. I mean, you just got to win your home games. It's going to be obviously much tougher. Arsenal go to Lens next, and Lens have had a pretty atrocious start to the season. I think they're bottom in France, but they got a good draw at Sevilla last night. Actually, should have won it. Actually, they missed a couple of really good chances in the second half to win that game, but that is going to be one hostile atmosphere over in France for that game. It is going to be brutal, and it's just so important to get off to a winning start at home. You just got to win those home games in the Champions League group stages, and Arsenal have did that. David Raya started in goal again after starting at Everton. There's been so much talked about this, but were you surprised yesterday that he started? I had Ramsdale in my predicted 11 for yesterday after Raya started at Everton. Did you, or were you expecting him, Raya?
I thought Raya would get this game, actually. I almost thought the Everton game would be like, we're warming him up so he doesn't make Champions League, his debut in the Champions League on a big night.
So do you think Ramsdale will be in goal for the derby?
I just about still do.
Kind
of talking to just, listening. This isn't like, there's no reporting here, but just listening and, watching your show, talking to guys in the press box and all that. I do wonder. And, I've said all along, I think Raya will eventually be Arsenal's first choice in the big games. I think there's something particular about Ramsdale's character that you think would suit, well, we know suits the North London derby. But do you think that's it now?
I don't know. I keep
at least 4 now.
I keep changing my mind. Like I thought Ramsdale would be in goal yesterday, and then when I saw that Raya was in goal, I was like, "Oh, is that it? Is this actually the changing of the guard?" But then the more I think about it, the more what you said there was Everton just we're going to give you that game to warm up for the Champions League rather than throwing you straight into the Champions League. And then does that mean that Ramsdale comes back in for Sunday? So I don't know. I keep changing my opinion on it, but I think I'd be more surprised now turning up on Sunday and seeing Ramsdale in goal than I would seeing Raya in goal. It kind of feels like this is the change, and it's come early. I thought it was a change I absolutely expected to happen at some point this season, but I wasn't expecting this early. You kind of felt like Aaron needed to make a couple of mistakes or something for it to happen, but he hasn't done that, I don't think. And for it just to happen exactly the same point that it happened with Leno and then Ramsdale, it's just really, really interesting. And I'd just be more. I think Raya gets it on Sunday now. I thought it was great yesterday as well, and because it was horrendous conditions for a goalkeeper. Yeah. He didn't have anything remarkable to do in terms of saves. All the saves he did have to make were fairly comfortable, and he did them well. But just in those conditions, it was terrible. You see for the first goal, the PSV keeper spilling Odegaard's shot and not turning it around the post, and just putting it into Saka's path. It was so easy to make mistakes for the goalkeeper yesterday, but everything that Raya did was really comfortable, really controlled. A couple of misplaced passes in the second half, but other than that, I thought it was everything that David Raya is basically yesterday. If there are any nerves, he certainly doesn't seem to be showing them over the first couple of appearances. And I'm on the side that I think Raya probably starts on Sunday now.
Yeah, I think you are right. I mean, what I certainly am of the view of is this is the game where we'll know. Was Arteta just saying, I would substitute my goalkeepers. There is no number one. This is the same as me picking Vieira over Havertz. And at the moment, I feel like he sort of says it with such force that it almost does feel like it's like he's just saying it. He's trying to shut down the conversation.
I thought Henry was good on it. Did you see CBS? Did you see the Schmeichel?
I should have.
Yeah, I was going to say you definitely.
But I was at the ground.
Just say yes now. He's been doing the rounds all day this morning. I was watching it on the clip on social media this morning, the conversation, and I thought Henry was really, really good on it. And like they were all, I think Schmeichel was kind of having to go at Arteta a bit for the handling of the situation, but Henry was just like, look, you're not the coach. I'm not the coach. Mikel Arteta is the coach. And if he thinks David Raya is the goalkeeper that can win Arsenal the league, then he's going to play him. And you've just got to be ruthless in these sorts. And I thought he was right. It's like, as much as we all really like Aaron Ramsdale, and we do, and he's done nothing wrong. In fact, he's done lots right since he signed for Arsenal. The more you think about it, you're like, there is really no room for friendship or, letting your feelings for someone sort of cloud the judgment here. If you've got two goalkeepers and you've got one that you think is better than the other, and you're trying to win the Premier League and the Champions League, you are going to play the one that you think is better than the other. And I mean, who do you think's a better goalkeeper, Raya or Ramsdale?
David Raya. Said it all along.
And I think that as well. And so I just think he plays, doesn't he?
He does. The thing I would say is for supporters, there is this thing, I said this in my piece today. I think Ramsdale is the guy that is emblematic of, or at least the signing that is emblematic of Arsenal's rise. He's the one that Gary Neville was like, well, I don't know if it was actually specifically related to him, but
just blame him. He's a good person to blame.
Which Arsenal fan's going to come to Gary Neville's defense? It's I don't know what Arsenal are doing signing. He's the player that supporters fell in love with, isn't he? From minute one, not just for his footballing qualities, his goal, his saves, it's his character. And those guys are really hard to tear yourself away from. But you better get used to it, because Arteta's done it with Partey, and obviously the affection there is not quite as strong as it is for Ramsdale. He's done it with we've talked about this before. We think there will be business going on at striker in the summer. That may well mean that you have to accept the idea that Gabriel Jesus next season isn't the guy, isn't the number 9, because Arsenal have found someone better. I don't know. Ben White, another that the Arsenal supporters absolutely love, but maybe one day Gabriel, Emile Smith-Rowe. Yeah. There are players that may get left behind. And if Arsenal are going in the right direction, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, it happened. The same things happened early in Arsene Wenger's reign, didn't they? Some of those.
Well, when he sold Merson, I remember it. Merson,
Ian Wright,
Overmars came in. Yeah, right. He let go for Anelka. I think the difference with Ramsdale is he's obviously not aging. He's still very, very young. And it just didn't feel like it was something no one was expecting going into the summer, was it? No one was expecting Arsenal to suddenly bring in, David Raya. They'd just given Ramsdale a brand new contract like months before.
Arsenal were they?
No, I think it was.
They thought he was going to Spurs.
Yeah, and Turner went, and Turner decided he wanted to go, and then Arsenal had to do something, didn't they? And they they turned to David Raya, and maybe this was something they did earlier than they expected. But
it was pretty savage from Raya. We chatted to him in the mix zone last night. Savage moment where he said, "I think this is the first time Arsenal or any team has had 2 top goalkeepers." I don't necessarily think that's a slight on Matt Turner, although it felt a little bit like it in the moment. It's probably more, I think, a reminder of how Raya views himself. Definitely a slight, though, I thought, on Manuel Almunia and Jens Lehmann, or Cech and Ospina. The obvious one is Leno and Martinez. So take your pick, David.
I go back to when Arsenal signed David Seaman. They had John Lukic in goal. He's just won the league in 1990, in 89. It was such an important player, and George Graham's team, like I said, first division title winner in that famous side at Anfield '89. And I saw Tim Stillman. It was a good tweet. He referenced this, and I think George Graham's quote at the time was, "I think John Lukic is one of the best goalkeepers in England. I just think David Seaman's the best." And it was that ruthless. It was, and there's a lot of similarities with this one, I think. And yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing one. I get lots of people keep saying, "Why are you always talking about Aaron Ramsdale? Why is the media making such a big thing about this?" But I think from people who are sort of watching from abroad, you know, Ramsdale's very, very close to being England #1. He just started against Scotland. It was putting an awful lot of pressure on Jordan Pickford. So I think that's why it's such a big story over here, is that, you know, it's just because of how influential he is and how close he is to being England's #1 goalkeeper ahead of the Euros. I think that's why there's so much focus being put on this, and so many questions continue to be asked to Mikel Arteta about it.
I think pretty much any member of Arsenal's sort of 11 from last season, you know, any of the guys we thought of as can't miss starters, I think you would have the same conversations about Ben White to an extent. You know, there's an argument that, like you say, potential England #1 and a very outspoken, vibrant character like Ramsdale is going to draw more sort of newspaper headlines than, say, if Gabriel were to be replaced at left centre back. But it's a big talking point, you know. And I think it kind of justifies the coverage it gets. I absolutely think it's in proportion with how significant a step this is for Arteta.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying here that you mentioned you spoke to David Raya in the mix zone yesterday, I thought, and this was that quote you were talking about, wasn't it? So I think it's the first time that 2 top goalkeepers are in the same team, so that it's just part of football now, and the gaffer wants 2 top players for each position, and that is what we have to work with. I've played the last 2 games, and now we see what happens on Sunday. So he doesn't know who's going to be in goal on Sunday, although he might.
I was directly asked any assurances. None at all. None at all.
How did he come across in the mix zone? What's he, you know, I've never spoken to him before. What's he, you know, Aaron's such a confident guy. You know, he's great in the mix zone. But, you know, how have you guided the character of Raya?
I mean, much like Aaron, a very good talker. I mean, really fitting into the Hector Bellerin mold of Spaniards you think have been in England for so long they might even be developing a bit of a local accent. I think that the most impressive thing actually is that he spoke, because, like we were just saying, he knows this is a huge story.
Yeah.
And in many ways, the best way to deal with it is to get your voice out there. Arteta's not wanting to talk about it very much, but that just leaves gaps that you and I, when we write about this, when we talk about this, we have to fill with something. So, you know, we have to reflect the fact, and, you know, my piece I have to say, David Raya says this battle's still, you know, this shirt's still up for grabs. There's nothing decided. So, you know, whatever we might think, David Raya is a much better informed source on the battle to be Arsenal's starting goalkeeper. Yeah, spoke really well. I think there was certainly a moment where it's like, oh God, what have I got myself in for? Maybe sort of realized, like, you know, I am the big topic of conversation. Myself and Aaron are the real talking point for the next few weeks. But I mean, you know, big credit for him for coming out. He really didn't need to. I mean, you know what that Arsenal mix zone's like, and I think he thought he got away from us. But then myself, Mark Ram, Brian's, Simon Collins hurtling towards him, David, a word. And yeah, credit to him for speaking out. And I think actually it's really valuable to get that reminder from within the dressing room that, look, this isn't decided yet. It's all still up for grabs, and we shall see how that plays out on Sunday.
Right, got some questions now. Sort of second part of this, and I thought it was a good one to start off because it was about Raya and Ramsdale. It's from Will. It says, Raya showing why it's such an improvement on Ramsdale. Even in horrid condition, his distribution was much calmer, despite a couple of misplaced passes, and he even completed more accurate long balls, 12, than Ramsdale has in 4 whole games this year. Didn't have to make any big saves, partially because of how well he commands his area. He deals with his crosses before an attacker even has a chance, which is something Ramsdale needs to improve on. You can feel the calmness at the back with him there, and I hope he starts every game moving forward. I don't think he's going to start every game. I think Ramsdale will certainly be in goal in the Carabao Cup next week, so he's certainly going to get some game time in the next week or so. But it's tough to argue with him here, Will. I think most of the things he says there is actually absolutely spot on, and I think it would be interesting, and they're never going to tell us, but you know, they're still getting used to Raya, obviously, but it'd be very interesting to know what the defenders think about it, or, you know, how they feel, who they prefer to have behind them. I think that would be a very, very telling thing. Not that we'll ever find out.
Oh no, I do think the thing that intrigues me the most, because there are bits there I would take issue with. I wonder to an extent if Now, going back to what we were saying earlier, did Raya just complete lots of long passes because Gabriel Jesus is slightly more likely to win those duels than Eddie Nketiah? You know, he is just better at battling with defenders. I mean, that's just a question. Like, we don't have enough to really know. But I think the calmness at the back is the thing that shines through. You have to bear in mind that it's a very easy being calm when you're 4-0 up against PSV. I know he did much the same against Everton, but you know, Ramsdale looked skittish against Crystal Palace because that was a situation that makes players get skittish. So we sort of need to know a bit more. And like you, every game feels a real... I just think, don't you think this happens quite a lot with every football club, but especially with Arsenal? The new signing has not had a chance for us to embed their mistakes. You know, we only know about Raya's brilliant passes to Ivan Toney. Everyone watches YouTube compilations, and you know, not that many fans go to the effort of making YouTube compilations of someone's worst moments. So we only know what's good about Raya, and I think there's a real rush to forget some of Aaron Ramsdale's brilliant moments and his brilliant displays. You know, Liverpool, Leicester. I could name a lot of games where Aaron Ramsdale's won points for Arsenal. Do you think? Yeah. I mean, has Aaron Ramsdale he hasn't become a worse goalkeeper just because David Raya signed?
No, he's a very, very, very good goalkeeper. Like I said, he's been so important to what's gone on at Arsenal over the last couple of years. And I think you're right. When a new signing arrives, it's like the first Fans Player of the Month award.
Yeah,
it always goes to a new signing. Doesn't it? I think Declan Rice got it this month in August, and it always the first. You go back again. I think Tim Stillman tweeted about this, and he did a previous list of recent winners of the first month of the season. It's always a new signing because, like you said, you don't see the bad things early on. You just see all the good things, and they always make that big impact. And Raya's done that. And I think we need to sort of take a step back, don't we, and look maybe a month down the line, 6 weeks down the line, once he's had more than just 2 games against teams who've really offered very, very little, before we really make a judgment. But
I mean, the one thing I would say is, at least this isn't Man United, because it sort of seems like immediately when they sign someone, all they go, "Oh God, he's terrible." Yeah,
I mean, it's a brilliant position for Arsenal to be in, for Arteta to be in for a season, and it's probably only going to last a season because ultimately one of them's going to leave, because this can't continue. It's not going to happen. There's no way. If it is Raya in goal for the foreseeable future, now Ramsdale's going to want to go in the summer. It's just obvious. He's not going to want to sit on the bench. And so one of them ultimately will go at some point, because it's not a long-term thing, no matter what Mikel Arteta says. I just cannot see he's going to be able to keep them both happy. But for this season, at least, it's a fantastic position for Arsenal to be in, to have keepers of this quality that you can rotate if you want to rotate. And if one of them gets injured, you can bring in another one in. And there is just, it's a dream for a manager, even if it is only for one season. Okay, there's a couple here on Smith Rowe, and brilliant, wasn't it? That noise of raw Smith Rowe when he came on, such a nice moment. Mikel said afterwards he felt very emotional about it. So I'll play him a little bit more, Mikel, and then you probably won't have to. David says, can Smith Rowe force his way into the team? Dominic here says, after telling us to make an extra time for 5 to 5:30 so he can listen to it on his train journey home, he says
80 minutes.
I know, 80 minutes.
We need to pad this out. Listen to it on half speed.
Given this was ESR's first outing of the season, where do you see him fitting in this season, both positionally and his future, which I sincerely hope is us, because I love watching him, as I'm sure he'll have aspirations to play at the Euros next summer. I mean, it was great to see him come on, and the cheer that he got was just a clear sign that everyone else felt exactly the same. Everyone wanted to see him. He got his chance. I thought he played well when he came on. I thought him and Reece Nelson made a big, big impact down that left-hand side. They caused PSV a lot of problems. Both of them are heavily involved in Odegaard's goal. It was a bit of a heavy heavy pass from Smith Rowe, almost lost possession, but then he showed a lot of strength to win it back. He found Reece found Odegaard, and it went in. So it was just good to see him involved again, and hopefully it's just going to be the first of many appearances for him this season. What do you think?
Yeah, I really hope so. You know that I am a huge fan of his game. I think there are qualities he has that none of the other options we look at as eights really have. He gets shots, he gets in positions. He, kind of like Jesus, of course, not to the same level, but he does have that little sprinkling of chaos to his game. You know, balls tend to break his way. I like all those qualities about him. And I still just go, oh, I don't know where he fits in.
No. And we have to remember that Martinelli wasn't around yesterday. And
exactly.
So there was one less sort of attacking midfielder stroke winger.
It was interesting, though, that Vieira came on at the right wing. By the way, I think maybe it was just sort of the Emirates was like, okay, we've got to make sure that Fabio knows we love him too, because that was the loudest I've heard the Vieira chant since about 2006.
Yeah.
There is, you know, if potentially Vieira gets more minutes on the right wing, now that we feel like he's settled, if he's learned, you know, I mean, you want to use him at left centre mid while he's playing well there. But if he's also just got up to speed with the Premier League, there's nothing stopping him from covering for Saka for a bit. That opens up minutes for Smith Rowe. But I do get the sense that unless, I'm sure we'll see him in the Carabao Cup, but it feels like there's a really, really big gap. And I think as much of his opportunity is going to come from, like you say, a few more injuries like Martinelli's, maybe Havertz, who I thought was a lot better last night. If it doesn't quite click there, and I'm not at all saying that, you know, Havertz should be dropped or anything remotely like that, but I'm saying that, you know, if Arteta decides he needs to take more time integrating him, that might open up opportunities. But look, you know, I'm saying all these things, I still just don't think we're going to see much of him, and I certainly don't think. Yeah, you know, mentioning the Euros there makes you think, could this be a situation that comes to a head in January? I hope not.
I can't see Arsenal letting him go in January, but I think in the summer they'll certainly have a decision to make, and he'll have a decision to make if he's not going to get many minutes. But ultimately, it's down to him as well. If he does get these opportunities, he really makes his mark. When he does get them, in the few opportunities he gets, then he can force his way into Mikel Arteta's thinking. Like you mentioned the Brentford game there, although it's the Carabao Cup, it's still a big opportunity for him to sort of step up and show what he can do. And it doesn't take much to turn things around. Just look at Fabio Vieira. I mean, he just looks a different. I thought he was great when he came on yesterday, Vieira, and he just looks like a completely different player. The transformation in him from the end of last season to the start of this season is just remarkable. He just looks so hungry, determined. Every time he's on the pitch, he wants to make things happen. He wants the ball. Everything that he wasn't last season, he is now. And, you know, it's fair play to him, because he has absolutely turned around the perception of him at Arsenal. And like you said, the cheers last night, the chant that was going around, you think back to the end of last season when there was groans when he was coming on the pitch, or he was being cheered when Mikel was taking him off the pitch. And it's just the change, the turnaround has been so rapid and drastic.
Quickly, because I know there's loads of Derby preview content to come from you, but do you think he's the one that starts on Sunday?
I think I've got Vieira in my predicted 11 for the Derby. I think he'll come in. I thought Havertz played very well. Yes, it was definitely Havertz's best performance. Very well might be pushing it. I thought he played well in both positions and had some really nice moments. But I still think the way that Vieira's playing right now, I still think I'd be having Vieira in that role rather than Havertz for Sunday.
Yeah, I think so. That Spurs midfield could. I mean, Arsenal are much better, but you know, the physicality of someone like Sarr up against Vieira, but then Arsenal can dominate the ball with him.
And I thought he was fine at Goodison. Exactly. Vieira. I thought he really dealt with it really, really well, and he looks like he can. When I say he looks like a new player, he almost looks like he can handle that now. He likes it, whereas before he was hiding away from that. It was blatantly obvious in the second half of last season. He looked scared at times, but doesn't look that now. And I think the form that he's in, the way he looks when he's on the pitch, I just think you've got to harness that, and you've got to play him when you've got a player in that sort of form who's clearly feeling it. And so I'd be starting him ahead of Havertz.
I certainly would have no fear at all with him. Well, minimal, as little fear as one can have before a North London derby.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Right, here's one from Gax who said, who do you think the best finisher at Arsenal is? I personally feel Trossard is the obvious answer, but some of my friends tell me it's Odegaard. What do you think? I thought this was a really good question.
I like that.
And I know, yeah, and I'm going to... I don't know the answer. I was trying to work this out before when I was looking at it and I was going through, and I was thinking, I think right now I would say Odegaard. I think if I've got a position, if I'm if I've got a player going through on goal, who would I want that player to be? I don't know, because maybe that's a little bit of a different situation. I think if the ball breaks to someone outside the box, the way like Odegaard's goal yesterday, you knew he was going to score that. Yeah, I felt so confident he was going to pick out the corner with that. But maybe if you
was this a Tim Stillman tweet as well, or was it? It might have been Johnny Singer, maybe. But someone I saw was Lewis Ambrose was saying it's a bit like Messi with Odegaard on the edge of the box, where you just go like, yeah, it's going in. This is score, wherever it is, it's going in.
And when you think when he first came to Arsenal, which wasn't that long ago, that was his kind of weak point. It was, he needs to score more goals in these positions. He needs to be a better finisher. And now he's just picking out the corner every single time. He just looks such a threat. So, yeah, I don't know, best finisher at Arsenal. I think given current form, you would say probably Odegaard at the moment. But I think Trossard is a very good shout. It was ridiculous that he'd only scored one goal before the Everton game for Arsenal. Right, really mad considering how good he is. But yeah, I think Trossard's a really good finisher. You think the form he's in, the goal at Everton, the goal he scored for Belgium as well during the international break, and the goal he scored last night. You know, he's clearly absolutely full of confidence in front of the goal now. So yeah. I'd probably say Odegaard. I think he'd be my choice.
I'm going Trossard. You know what it is? I suppose if you're sort of saying like, you put someone in their ideal position, maybe it's Odegaard. But if the ball just sort of, let's say it's, landing at someone in the box, there's a defender coming towards them. I feel like Trossard has more ways of scoring. He's so two-footed. We've seen that with left foot, right foot goals in the last few games. Like I agree with you, Odegaard is the most precise. We've not even mentioned Saka, by the way, who has quite a decent left foot on him.
He has got a good left foot, yeah.
I'm trying to think of anyone else.
Martinelli's finish at Everton was great.
Yeah,
for the disallowed goal, but I wouldn't have him.
It's absolutely no one. I mean, the other one is Eddie Nketiah.
Not at the moment, no. I think Eddie's had plenty of chances he hasn't taken. I think it's between Odegaard and Trossard. I agree. If someone went through one-on-one, I'd want it to be Trossard. But I think when the ball breaks to the edge of the box, I think I'll be going Odegaard at the moment. So I think it's definitely a sort of toss of a coin between those two, really. Basically, we haven't answered the question. But
well, I think you're going Odegaard, aren't you? I'll take Trossard. So we have not answered the question, no.
Yeah, but I don't know if I am going Odegaard. I've changed my mind now. The fact that if I was going a one-on-one, I'd choose Trossard. I don't know. I think it's either of them. Flip a coin. Who would you want to take a penalty right now more than anyone else in the Arsenal team?
Yeah, Odegaard.
Yeah, that's what I'd definitely go Odegaard at the moment. Here's one from Trevor. He says, Charles, do you think Odegaard value is in the 100 million when you see what other players cost, who cost that figure? That's the figure I'd put him on. Arsenal players have increased the value of the club. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what you'd put Odegaard on now, especially when he signs this new contract, which hopefully is going to be very, very soon. I mean, you're pushing 150 million. I mean, he's that young. He's got that much more room to improvement on a long-term contract in a Premier League club who can score goals, create goals, who's only going to get better. I mean, you're literally talking 150 million pounds mark, aren't you, for Martin Odegaard? I think, especially once that new contract signed.
I mean, it's almost sort of, there's no point having a price tag on him.
Yeah, there is no point.
No one can afford him other than teams he wouldn't want to play for. Maybe PSG is the one exception. What a sensational bit of business. £30 million. Nowadays, £30 million, if you're Chelsea, doesn't even get you someone to keep your bench warm. For £30 million, Arsenal have got one of the best number 10s in the world, number 10s, number 8s, because he could be a bit of everything in the world. If I was Edu, someone picked up the phone and said, what's it going to cost for us to have a conversation about Martin Odegaard? I mean, I would not take 150 mil because I think it costs that much.
How do you replace Martin Odegaard now?
Exactly.
You just can't. It doesn't matter how many players you sign who is there? Bellingham. But he's a different player, isn't he, Bellingham, I think, to Odegaard. They're very different, as good as they both are, and they are both obviously attacking midfielders. I think they're very, very different in terms of their qualities. But I don't really like that. Tom Canton, I was speaking to him for a show we're doing tomorrow, and he was saying sort of in the Premier League, Maddison's kind of in that same sort of, you know, that same sort of position, that playmaker role, who can score from distance as well.
Yeah, not on that level though.
Oh, he's not on Odegaard's level. No, not at all. But you just look around Europe and think, who would you replace him with? There's just no one there. So I agree. I think, you know, 150 million maybe would open up a conversation just because of purely business sense in terms of Arsenal. But from my point of view, he's just absolutely priceless. He just doesn't have a fee.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got one more now. I think this is the last one now. Although in fact, there's two of them on there. And there's a question about the sort of academy players. I mean, Arsenal lost to PSV yesterday in the what's it called?
Youth League.
UEFA Youth League, isn't it? Yeah, it was 2-1. Vieira scored, didn't they? Ended up losing 2-1. Says, hi Charles, James. Such a nice result for the first team, but we lost in the Youth Champions League. We know Arsenal's youth is pretty strong, but compared to City and Chelsea, who heavily spends on recruiting the best talents out there, I think Arsenal need to follow the footsteps to those clubs in order to reach the next level. External solutions for the youth and bolstering the squad will definitely raise the quality of the overall team. Also, we may be able to make better profits from the youth. Arsenal youth system is good, but I think it is not as attractive nor the best in the country so far. And then one below it as well, asking for a question for me and you. What do you think the next breakthrough academy star is going to be? Hopefully hitting. I mean, it's a tough ask to get an academy star hitting the heights of Saka. That's like a once in a generation type. I mean, probably Ashley Cole was probably the last before Saka, who you would say came through the academy to become one of the best in his position, unless you count Cesc, I suppose, in that. But you don't. I don't really count him. Obviously, got him from Barcelona. So, I mean, it was a shame they lost in youth. I don't think Arsenal will be too overly bothered. I think when you look at Arsenal's youth at the moment as well, that team is very, very young, really young. You know, you got lots of 16-year-old players playing in the like the 21s, and they could easily still be playing for the 18s at the moment. When you talk about, you know, Lewis Skelly, Wanyeri, and that lot, Cozy Dubry, and that batch who are coming through, it's a very young batch, and I don't know. I mean, Arsenal put a lot of money into Haaland. They put a lot of investment in it. You know, they haven't gone down the same route that Chelsea certainly have recently, and signing every 18-year-old Brazilian for 10, 20 million pounds and putting them into the academy. I'm not sure Arsenal are ever going to do that. I think they're going to focus much more on the local area.
And I would just sort of say on that Chelsea thing, like, I mean, two things. They're not going in the academy. They're going to Strasbourg, and maybe, you know, if Bowley gets his way with Sporting, they'll be going to Sporting. Or, you know, the Cole Palmers and Noni Madueke's, really talented players, but they're going to find themselves sitting on Mauricio Pochettino. I mean, maybe not with Madueke. I think he's great. But a lot of them will find themselves sat on Pochettino's bench, and maybe some of them hit. But, you know, it's almost what Chelsea are doing is picking up loads of 19, 20-year-olds and hurling dice. And actually, they're doing this when you talk to sort of people in youth football. I'm sure you hear the same. They're kind of doing this at the cost of their academy. A lot of these kids are looking around and going, how on earth, if I'm a young 16-year-old midfielder, how on earth am I going to get a pathway to the first team when Chelsea have signed Caicedo, Lavia, Fernandes? You know, they have, in theory, they have their midfield for the next decade, which, you know, may well have its ups for Chelsea as well as its downs. You're right that the batch we have here, you know, the names you'd mention in response to that second question, they're 16-year-olds. It may well be, or 17-year-olds. It may well be 5 years before we see them come through. But actually, like, that's normal, especially for a team. When we're at this level that Arsenal are now, you've kind of got to think about it in the same way that City do, where they had Foden and not many, you know, lots of good players were sold on for profits, like Lavia. But Lavia was never going to get in the City team. Palmer was probably never going to get in the City team. So you're looking at players that may well just sort of be around the fringes of your squad. And, you know, then maybe you sell on, hopefully, for a bit more than Edu has got for some of his players in the summer. I mean, I know we haven't answered it. So do you want to put a name on, like, who is the best breakthrough academy star at the moment?
I don't know. To be honest, I can't really say that I'm an expert on it. I haven't seen enough of them. You know, I've seen what I'm sure it's about the same as you for a lot of the young kids coming through right now, and the ones we all know are clearly the most talented in the batch. I think, you know, what we've seen from Wanyeri looks great. Lewis Skelly looks great. Cozy Dubry has looked very exciting when I've seen him. Raul Walters looks like he's probably ahead of those guys in terms of his age and his physicality. Maybe he'll get a go. I thought he might go out on loan. I was surprised.
Norton Cuffey's the other one as well, out on
yeah,
loan.
He's doing well, but he's again. I look at Norton Cuffey, and I think Arsenal probably going to end up. He's probably going to end up being sold. You see, he's like one of those players that they're putting out on loan to get his profile up, and then they'll probably sell him. And I'm sure he'll probably be quite happy with that as well, to go out and continue his career elsewhere. You look at obviously Patino, what's going on. I think Swansea's a good move for him. If he has a really good season with Swansea, then hopefully Arsenal will be able to make some money out of him if they decide to sell. He's still got a chance of getting a new deal. We'll have a year left at that point, but it's hard. It's just where Arsenal are right now. It's very hard if you're an academy kid to break into that team. Saka and Smith Rowe came through at a completely different time when Arsenal were really, really struggling. It was a perfect time for them. Would they have got a route through to the first team as easily as they did if they'd have come through right now? I think they probably wouldn't have done. It's just it was perfect timing, and Arsenal benefited from that, and the players benefited from that. And now, we were all there last year speaking of Jack Wilshere and Per Mertesacker, and they understand the challenge that is facing them now because of the upturning quality at Arsenal. They know that they're going to have to work even harder to get these kids through, and it's just going to be, it's a really tough business. It's really tough to make it. And when you talk about there being the next Saka, it's 1 in 100 chance that someone will come through and be the next Saka. It is that difficult to come through and make it and be a Saka or be a Phil Foden. You've got to be not just good, you've got to be great, and it's really, really hard. And hopefully it will happen. But it wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't for a while.
I think there's an interesting cultural thing about Arsenal. I know we probably could both attest to this from our times covering the club for football.london. I think, the culture of Cole, Wilshere, going right the way back to Rocastle, and even before Tony Adams, Merson, there is such a desire to find young superstars in a way that actually, and we've seen this literally, on analytics. It doesn't exist at Tottenham, doesn't exist at Chelsea. There's not this yearning to produce more stars of your own. And equally, what I think that does for young Arsenal footballers is it puts so much pressure on them. Charlie Patino has had column inches beyond column inches. Miguel Aziz before him as well, and they're all spoken about as the next Saka, the next Smith Rowe. So I'm really conscious now, especially that we're out of that environment where we have to do that because it's the job, that when we do that, we put huge pressure and huge attention on these guys. I know they put it on themselves as well, and the media is only part of the landscape, but I am very conscious that if we every week talk about, Cozy Dubridge, a superstar, he's going to be great, he's going to be, 100 games for Arsenal, that's really asking a lot of him. And we're not talking about 20-year-olds here, we're talking about kids. So it is a real I think it actually, we maybe underappreciate, because the expectations and the level you can achieve at Arsenal are so high, and the attention on it is so high, just how tough it is for these guys at this stage, where we are all just starting to talk about them in a way we don't at other clubs. Well, it's a downbeat way to end the show, isn't it?
It's a bit of a downbeat way, isn't it? We sort of it's been a completely upbeat episode, and then we end it on a big downer. But
how Charles Watson, James Benge are ruining kids' careers.
Yeah, but hopefully we can all look forward to Sunday now and getting back on the winning trail. Huge game. Are you going to be there?
I am going to be there. Yes, as ever, feeling a little bit sick. So on the subject of weddings, let's bring this whole episode full circle. The last 2 North London derbies at the Emirates have coincided with friends' weddings, and Arsenal have won them both. And every North London derby I've attended of recent memory, Arsenal have not won. So preemptive apologies. Then. Exactly. Someone feel free to, if you see me on the Holloway Road.
We've won.
I was on holiday for the one at Spurs last season, and I was at a wedding for the other one. I was at a wedding for the one the previous season, Smith Rowe, Aubameyang, that one. I was there at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for what we may call the Rob Holding game.
That night's gone out of my mind.
I think I was there for wasn't at the one that Aubameyang missed. I was at the one where Lacazette scored a wonder goal, and I was at the one where Thomas Partey got pushed on the pitch. I'm cursed. So if you see me in the Holloway Road, any Arsenal fan, I will totally understand if you rugby tackle me to the ground and stop me getting in.
Yes. Well, this is going to be my first North London derby, sitting in my seat next to my dad. I honestly can't even remember. I'm trying to think when the last time I've actually been in the stands. It would have been ages and ages ago. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Cannot wait. Fingers crossed we get the job done. Look, mate, it's been a pleasure as always. We've hit the hour mark. So once again, we've gone on longer than we thought we were going to, but it's been great. And yeah, we'll be back next Tuesday unless you get stuck in an airport somewhere. I think we'll be back next Tuesday, won't we?
No, getting rid of me unless I'm in hospital because some Arsenal fan has kept me out of the derby.
Well, hopefully that is the case. Right, cheers, mate. I'll speak to you soon.
Speak to you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.